Welcome everyone, this is Watch Complications and I'm Brian. This is a watch review video for you. I've finally gotten to my Seiko SSA 401J1. This is the Seiko Presage cocktail Irish coffee, and it's just a beautiful watch, ombre dial. We're going to do the normal spec talk, look up close at it, do the macro view. Can't wait to talk about more of the details. I do want to point out, this is a Japanese watch, right? Seiko. And to that end, I today have on, well, a couple things. I'm trying out some new audio, so you might notice a little bit of a microphone here. And the shirt, another one from Vario. I'll put a link in the description below, along with the blog post with all the pictures for this review. But this is a Japanese date wheel. So again, check out the t-shirts from Vario. I think they're really cool. I bought 3 of them myself. I love supporting micro brands, as you all know. And so, throw a couple bucks. If you can't afford a watch right now, maybe you can get a cool t-shirt. No watch t-shirts, come on. All right, subscribe if you haven't, ring the bell if you want updates, and check out my website, watchcomplications.com. I'm also on Instagram at watch_complications. One note before we talk watch, particularly if you're new to the channel, or maybe this is the first video of mine that you've come across, that I'm a little bit of a different style reviewer. I live with these watches. I do normal wear for weeks. A lot of the watches that I review are ones that I've either bought or own. Yeah, I do get some samples from companies sometimes. There's nothing solicited here, and in this case, I bought this watch because I like it. There are always pros and cons. I always go into pros and cons. I don't just recite the spec list real quickly and then get you out of here in 5 minutes. I'm going to walk you through, show you nice close-up pictures, give you full explanations. So if you want a little bit more to your review, you've come to the right place. All right, Seiko Presage cocktail Irish coffee. Here we go. Real quick, I want to show what the packaging looked like for this watch. By the way, if you're interested in anything about watch books, check out my latest review on Eternal Springs, which is an introduction to mechanical watches, and I talk about a couple of these other books you can kind of see over here. This is the wristwatch handbook and the watch repairs manual. Those are good books too, so check out that video. Now, the interesting thing about this watch, one of the biggest pros, is it came with a thermos because it's called Irish coffee. And it actually came with this nice little thermos. Seiko on one side, Presage on the other. It's, you can see the size of my hand here. It's not a huge thermos. It's kind of just a nice travel size. Would fit in most carriers, like in a bag or in the car. And it's just, style company. It's really, really cool gift that came with it. So the package come with 2 boxes. One of those was for the thermos. There you go, just a simple box with a little bit of plastic wrapped around the actual thermos. It's got a non-skip pad there on the bottom. Great little gift that came with this Seiko. I mean, most of their watches don't come with a little gift like that, but this one did. It's an LE of 1000, which is just a nice, cool touch. Okay, got the Seiko box here. And what I like about this is that it's not over-the-top packaging, just enough to essentially securely transport it. Sort of a nice gray case with silver on top. On the bottom, you can see there's just a nice slot for the manual. Nothing too fancy. Inside the case, boop, simple box. Some padding at the top, again foam, keeping it secure. That's what that looks like. It's a nice brown color. And some basic plastic and protectors, as usual, around the watch. So real simple packaging, and that's one of the big pros. They didn't waste a lot by shipping this watch, even with the extra thermos. So nice, simple packaging, love it. All right, so let's talk specs on this Seiko Presage cocktail Irish coffee. Now, there are 2 types of Seikos that are my favorite. That is the Grand Seiko spring drives and the Seiko Presage. And the dials that they have on the Presage series are some of the best, and if there is a step between Seiko as a brand and Grand Seiko as a brand, it is the Presage line that fills that gap. So the specs on this watch are mostly moderate. The diameter is 40.5 millimeter. On paper, I measured it at 40.1, which is pretty good. At least it's in my personal wheelhouse, which is between 40 and 42. The lug to lug is 47.5. So it's gonna be a little bit big on some wrists, but for most people, it'll be just fine since it's less than 50 millimeters. So 47.5 lug to lug. The height on this, if you read about this particular watch online, you might see things like 11.8 millimeters. Well, that might be the other variant of this that doesn't have the power reserve complication or the date at 6 o'clock, but just the regular date complication at 3. Either way, I measured the height on this and it's 14.6 millimeters. So this is a tall watch. And the lug width is 20 millimeters. So fit
a lot of straps that you might have in the box. Weight is 83 grams, so it's a little hefty for something on leather, and that has to do with the fact that it's a pretty deep case at almost 15 millimeters. Water resistance is 5 ATM, so 50 meters. And the complications this thing boasts are the date complication at 6. Don't let that throw you off. Usually that's a small seconds complication when you see it implemented this way, but that is the date. And then we have the power reserve subtly implemented as the ombre goes from light to dark, from center to edge of the dial. You can see power reserve there from E all the way to about 40 hours. All right, let me take this off the wrist to talk about the other characteristics. The reference of this is SSA 401J1. This has the, let me get the roller moved around here. This has the 4R57 movement and 29 joules. It's a 21.6 beat rate, and I'm getting on my time grapher about a -3 to +5 a day depending on the position. Amplitude is a little low, between 220 and 230. Nothing particularly egregious, but might be an issue for some people in some wearing situations. This is a water resistance of 5 ATM, which they have on here, 5 bar, so about 50 meters. And of course, it's made in Japan, the movement and everything else, Seiko, and just a great looking watch. So what are the big pros with this watch? Obviously, the dial is the star of the show. With a lot of the Presage models, that's the case, and it's no different with this Irish coffee look. And the dial is an ombre. I have another ombre in my collection. That's my Christopher Ward C60. This is the Make 2 of the Trident. This is the bronze ombre, and this was a limited edition of 300. The one I have is number 10. And this is probably one of my favorite watches in my collection. Not probably, this is one of my favorite watches. This is a top 3. I could not be convinced to get rid of this, I don't think, under almost any circumstances. This is just an amazing watch, and love it to pieces. And it kind of made me think of this, right? That beautiful ombre, that shift from light to dark. It's just a beautiful look on a dial. And if the texture is correct, this one is hand distressed. So each dial is different. This has got sort of a feathered pattern on it. We'll see it much better up close in the macro view in a second. So the dial. The finishing on this, with particularly the markers, the hour markers you can see, and the level of accuracy with the dial printing, and then the feathering, the texture in the dial you're going to see, for the Presage line, which is really kind of the high end of Seiko anyway. Like I said, if there is a step between Seiko and Grand Seiko, it is this sort of dial making that gets them a little bit closer to each other. And I'm saying that with a little bit of reservation, but at the same time, it's just true. As you'll see when we get this at the macro level, everything is just so crisp, clean. The textures are just amazingly wonderful, and it's just mesmerizing to a certain degree. The finishing is excellent with all of the beveled edges on the markers and the hands. It's just a beautiful look. You see the colors, the silver, that the power reserve complication hand is tipped in black. The date hand is black, while the main hands are silver. It's just a great contrast, play on colors. All the finishing is so well done. The polishing on the case is okay. Nothing to necessarily write home about, and some people may not like that it's got this sort of gold colored rotor on it. But again, it's kind of going with the theme, or as close as they can get to it, with the color matching on the dial. So it is what it is with that. So the dial, the finishing. The other big pros are the complication implementations. I love this, exaggerated power reserve that covers almost a third of the dial. It's just, I love power reserve and small seconds. Those are my favorite complications. And what they've done here is they've got the power reserve, which just, it dominates this third of the dial, almost half. And then you've got what would normally be the small seconds at 6 is the date, which kind of throws you for a loop, right? A little bit. And I'm using that analogy because I'm a programming instructor. And so you have to do a double take almost. And it's just clever, both with the power reserve and the date. Love it. This has a deployant clasp on it, which is going to keep that leather strap lasting a little bit longer. And what I think I'm going to do, as you'll see in another video soon when I look at my Grand Seiko and the new leather strap I got for it, the Mugatu strap, I'm thinking of taking this deployant clasp off of this Seiko and putting it as a deployant clasp on my Grand Seiko, and then just putting a regular buckle on this one, because the strap is okay here, but it's not like, as valuable, I guess I'll say, or as quality as the one for my GS. So I think I'm going to take this deployant clasp and put it on the other watch. But still, this comes with a deployant clasp, and so it's got your sort of your classic uh, locking mechanism here. Of course, a couple keepers there to keep it in place. So you push the deployant buttons here, and it snaps open, and then you can push it again, and it drops down, and then you can change the location on the strap for your proper wrist size. Lock that down, lock that down. Okay, great little clasp, particularly at this price point. I already mentioned the packaging was great and the fact that it came with a thermos. Okay, so what are the things that I think are just okay? Well, I mentioned the strap. Yeah, it's okay. It's a good color. I've tried to combine several different other shades of brown and other straps with this, and right now this is the only one that's really working with this Irish coffee dial. And so you're going to have to be very on point with the color or the shade of brown, or whether that's a lighter brown, darker brown, or a contrasting color for this to look right. The rotor noise, this movement, the 4R57, it's a fairly good movement, but it is a little bit loud on the wrist from time to time when you're moving your arm around. You can hear that rotor spinning sometimes. The cost of this thing varies quite widely online. And so that's something you're to contend with. Like if you were to look at this, you're going to see it on places like Amazon or Chrono24. It's going to be, $700-800, maybe close to $900. I bought this on Watch 88 for $599, and then when I looked a couple weeks later, it was up to $799. So I got quite a steal on this, but you might find it for varying prices. I was seeing sort of the average price somewhere between $600 and $700, but there are only 1,000 of these, and it does have a little brother, and that one just has the date complication at 3. Like I said, doesn't have the power reserve, doesn't have the date small seconds look going on, just a date at 3, a little bit thinner of a case. So this does have another variant out there that has a few more numbers in it in terms of the limited edition. And then sort of last in terms of the okay category is the general comfort. It's got a nice moderate diameter, like I said, so it feels comfortable, wants to feel comfortable on the wrist because it's only about 40.5 millimeter, but it does have that height to it, almost 15, so it can feel a little bit bulky on the wrist. And that is the biggest con, I think, is the height and how that contributes to the overall comfort of the watch. And a lot of what's contributing to the extra height is there's a little bit extra on the case back. It's also got this more vintage looking crystal, this sort of box crystal look, and so those things are contributing pretty heavily to the overall height of this. Also in sort of the con category, and why I think I'm going to change the deployant clasp, put it on my GS, and put a regular buckle on this, is because it's actually reverse. Normally, think about it this way, I'll use my ombre here as an example. Normally, you're going to have this part of the strap coming around, and you'll have what's left sitting here at the top, right? So this is on the top of your wrist. Well, on this particular watch, some people are going to like it, some people won't, but having the remaining part of the strap on the inside means that, as you're turning in against your body or with things, on your desk or whatever, this has a tendency to grab things a little bit more than it would if it was on this side. So that's a potential con for some people, is having the reverse strap. Now I could just flip it around. It means that the deployant clasp will be a little bit weird taking it on and off, more so than normal. But you know what? I think I would prefer it reversed around the other way. And the other thing I've noticed in terms of cons is that, I don't know if it's just the one I got or if it's just generally how they designed this one, is that there's a lot of extra space between the case and the crown. So the stem length is a little bit more than I would typically want to see, because you could get gunk and other things in there. Again, I don't know if it's just mine or if this is how they've sort of designed it. Now, it looks fine when you're doing like setting and stuff like that. First position, second position, push it back in. It's just not as close as you would normally find on a watch, particularly at this price point. So that stem might need to be cut down a little bit. Maybe at some point I'll cut it down if I really get ambitious, but I have a feeling that should be a little bit closer to the case than what it is. So those are the cons, overall, the height and how that contributes to the overall comfort. Reverse strap and then the stem length and the crown there on this particular one. Anyway, let's take an up close look at this and really take in the level of finishing and dial work on this, and it really make you, I think, appreciate what Seiko has done here with this entry in their Presage series. Time to blow your mind with the dial work on this Seiko Presage SSA 401J1. This is the Presage Cocktail Irish Coffee, and look at that. This is why I was saying step between Seiko and Grand Seiko. If there is a bridge between them, it is dials and watches like this one. I am going to struggle, I know, at keeping my fingerprints off of this. I wear it all the time. Like I said in the intro, I wear my watches. I don't baby them or protect them to any particular certain degree. Look at this. Sometimes those silver highlights, like the logo, or the hands look black, depending on the light. Look at the quality of paint on the Power Reserve hand. Crisp, clean. Look at the concentric circles on the interior recess of the date complication. Printing as good as you're going to get on about any kind of watch made in Japan for our 57. Crisp, sharp lines on the Power Reserve dial, we'll call it. I love how it goes from E and then the 10s. Gosh, it's beautiful. Seriously, like, this is just crazy good. There are few watches that I'm this impressed by when it comes to the dial. I mean, seriously, like Grand Seiko, come on. You see the edges and the sharp lines of the markers, the white printing. It's really interesting that they chose to go as stark from, this brown and black combination, and then boom, right at the edge with the minute track and the sec track is white. Clever. Well played, Seiko. It's just crazy cool. Look at the feathering. Like, I could just not talk, right? And just show you different views or angles of this. It does look like you're staring into a cup of coffee that has some like fresh cream dropped into it, right? In terms of the color. Like, wow. Wow. Okay, let's look at the reverse a little bit here. Movement. See there. Nice finishing on the movement as well. Flip it around this direction. See the escapement, balance wheel. And this is a 21.6 beat rate, 3 hertz. Again, you can see there's some brushing on the different bridges. They've gone with this sort of gold colored rotor. Look at the clasp here, the strap. It's a fairly good, okay quality in terms of the leather as well. It's not bad. It's not great. It's all right. Here's the clasp. You can see I've been wearing it. No shame. Got no shame for wearing watches. Here's the crown. See the S there. Of course, you check out the blog post that accompanies this, link down in the description. You can take a look at lots of pictures, macro and otherwise, to get a good feel for this watch. See the sort of the hand layers there. What a great design. There are other models in this series that have different dials. Has the Power Reserve and the date like this, but like different like white dials, silver dials. There's other colors. but for some reason this particular one with this ombre Irish coffee dial really stood out to me personally, and just really like it. It's an interesting but yet a classy look, I think, my opinion. As always, just giving you as much of a look at this as I can given the angles, and it looks so good in person. Sometimes it looks light, sometimes it looks dark. Hands look silver, markers. Sometimes they look black. It's just like, well, there's the macro view, my friends. Isn't that cool? All right, I recommend this watch, yes.
Well, there we go, another watch review in the bag. Hopefully you enjoyed watching the video as much as I enjoyed making it and wearing the watch. This is going to be in my collection for a significant amount of time, I expect. I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon. I recommend looking into the Presage line. There's a lot of options out there, variants of this specific watch, but also of a lot of other models. They're sort of usually dressier style watch, and you could find one, I'm sure, for a lot of occasions. They're affordable, and they're just a great all-around watch at an affordable price point. All right, I'm Brian. This is Watch Complications. Subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you on the interwebs.